Standing seam metal roofs are great because they look really good, they stand up to extreme weather, and they last a long time. But just like anything else, that's dependent on the quality of the installation. So today on the Metal Roofing channel, we are showing you how to install a standing seam metal roof from start to finish. What's up guys, welcome to the Metal Roofing channel. I'm Thad Barnett. Subscribe if you're new. We release metal roofing and metal construction content every Monday and Wednesday. Well, today is the long-awaited standing seam metal roof install video on Adam Mazzella's house, and I have Matt Lane and his crew from Metal Construction Solutions and Installations that are going to be demonstrating the entire process. Make sure you check out in the description. We have additional resources and more videos covering every step of the way. Adam's roof is about 3,000 square feet with 2 valleys, a chimney, and a couple pipe penetrations. It's pretty simple, but we're going to show you warrantable details. Sheffield Metals, weather-tight warranty details. We're going to be installing an 1.5-inch snap lock system, but first of all, we need to take off the old shingles, see what the decking looks like underneath. Let's get to it. The dumpster's been delivered, so the crew starts by getting their fall protection in order before removing existing flashings on the current roof. Shingles get torn off, tar paper ripped up, and every nail pulled. There are many reasons to tear off the old shingles before putting a brand new metal roof on, but the #1 reason for Adam's house was the plywood roof decking. It was clearly bowing and warping in places and was noticeable from the ground even when the shingles were on. This unevenness would show through even more on a metal roof. Plus, if plywood has rotted away, it's best to have a solid substrate to attach your new roof to. When we got down to the existing plywood on Adam's roof, it was clear there was a lot of material that needed to be replaced.
Couple things we're looking for. We're looking for water damage, obviously mold, mildew, anything like that. We're looking for the plywood to see if it's delaminating, any points where it's weak. Obviously anywhere where something was cut in or patched in that we might need to repair as well. Just walking across the deck sometimes you can tell, if it's just over its age, over its lifespan. I also saw some large waves and bows in the roof over here. Adam decided it would be a better idea to replace these and straighten the roof out before he put the metal roof on than have those big bows and rolls in the roof. So we sistered on extra 2x6s. We ran string lines from one end to the other. We measured down to make sure we had a nice clean plane before we screwed down our sister boards. So we screwed those on to set our plane better and then finished nailing them off before we put our plywood on. Down over here you can see our plywood going down. We've staggered our joints on our plywood. Depending on the situation, you may want to run H-clips in your plywood. Here we're refastening the new deck, so when it's all finished, we'll have a nice, straight, clean, flat deck for us to put a new roof over.
The next step is to install underlayment, or dry in the roof. The product we're using is a fully adhered underlayment called Sharkskin Ultra SA.
Here we are, we've removed our old shingles. We've repaired any plywood that was damaged. We had a section down here. It was delaminated, so we pulled that piece up, replaced it. We've got the Sharkskin SA we just put down on the roof for our weather tightness. We ran our valley first. We made sure all of our laps, we had a 4-inch lap under. That's what's required for Sheffield Metals weather tight warranty. We want to install our valley first and make sure our sheets as we put them on were shingled over. That way when water runs off, it's pretty much common sense. You want to make sure that water shingles and runs down on the next sheet and then off the building. It's a great product. We've used it for years, and I probably wouldn't use anything else.
On the chimney, we are installing a curb, so Matt needs to take some final measurements to send off to the curb manufacturer. Remember to order your custom pieces ahead of time so they arrive when you're ready to install.
When it comes to measuring pitch anymore, obviously, I just use my phone. There's other ways you can do it. You can set a level on here with a speed square or a right angle square, and you can pull the degrees off of that pretty easy. But when you're doing the curbs, one of the first things you need to know is, okay, what's my pitch in my area? And on a lot of houses, just because I've got a pitch over here, on one side of the house and it looks the same over here, doesn't mean they're the same. So always make sure, when you're doing the curb, that you know what the pitch is around that particular curb you're doing. So I'm going to check it over here. I'm going to check it on the other side, just to make sure that we're consistent all the way around. So with this particular curb, we're dealing with a chimney. We're dealing with a pretty uneven surface. This one, I drew a baseline out along the bottom. We squared the bottoms off to make sure our sides and our baseline were square. So when we order our square curb, we know what we're dealing with. And then I ran a level up on here at a couple different points, just so I know the chimney doesn't come out too far, or there's not a stone that comes out too far. But you don't want to bring your curb up and all of a sudden find out something on a regular surface like this is making your curb too small. So you want to go around your whole chimney, double check. We'll make sure we have a 1/4 inch of room all the way around. Like I said, we want to make sure we've got enough. We don't want 1 inch or 2 inches because it's just going to be, you know, a really sloppy way to do it. But we just want to make sure that our curb fits proper when we order it, and that it's all done right, and we don't have to go back and try to reorder a curb because we didn't take our time and our due diligence, you know, in the beginning to order it properly.
The next step of the process is to install the perimeter trim. But first, let's check in with Adam about the material and profile he picked for his roof.
Hey everybody, I'm Adam Mazzello with Sheffield Metals. Just wanted to take a minute and go over why I went with a 24 gauge, 1.5" snap lock, 450 snap lock in medium bronze on my house. As you guys have seen, my house has got a lot of earth tones. I've got some like tan, brownish siding. I've got some natural stone. The way it worked out was I went with medium bronze. It was something that I've always liked. And it just jives well with my house. From a panel selection standpoint, I was looking at mechanical lock, looking at an 1 3/4" snap lock, and really looking at the 450 snap lock. 450 snap lock is what it was. We went with a UL90 construction design, so we spaced our clips. I believe UL90 calls for 18 inches. We actually spaced them at 16 inches, so we actually went a little bit tighter than UL90. We preach this all the time, so gotta practice what you preach, and that is putting striations or some sort of structure into the panel. I went with a clip relief, which is adjacent to the male and female ribs. That's just going to help conceal fastener heads as well as clips, depending on which side you're on of the panel. You know, you're gonna have less dimpling. And then the striations, that's gonna help with, you know, oil canning and things like that. Knowing that we did everything we can to shore up the deck structurally, even it out as best as we could structurally, and they really did a phenomenal job. I think the big thing was we still want to guard against oil canning. It still looks beautiful. So really looking forward to the finished product, and you know, really happy with the job these guys have done so far.
Okay, so we've finished our drying on Adam's building here. Now we're starting to run our perimeter flashing. This flashing is pretty simple, but it's really important. Sheffield Metals has a 6-inch screw pattern. And the reason it's so important, I mean, this is the edge of your building. This is where your wind uplift is mainly going to occur. And if you skimp on this fastening, if you're running a lot of screws and they're stripping out, you need to make sure that's correct, because this is what is going to hold down your roof in the long run when you get a good storm. This type of flashing is a cleat. The panel's going to go on. It's going to get wrapped right around this flashing here, and it's going to hook all the way up and down. And then the same thing, we've got a piece here started on the eave. Every panel is going to get cleated and hooked onto that eave. The top of the panel gets hard fastened so that we have expansion and contraction here, free to move. This flashing in here, we're running up now, running up the rake. We're going to tie in up here to this other rake with a nice clean transition. So one side of the building comes into the other, the panel's fastened up tight there, the ridge cap will come over, and that'll be weather tight. We're having some issues up on this part of the ridge. For some reason, a little bit of the lumber in the fascia isn't, you know, grabbing as it should, so we've put a few extra screws in here. Part of Sheffield Metals warranty details is a starter strip of ice and water shield covering all the fasteners on the eaves and on the rakes like this, just to make sure that these things are sealed in, just in case there's any holes. We'll go through and we'll caulk and seal everything that we've got that's not good, but you do, I mean, have areas that we've missed. We've made sure we've gotten the screws in that we've need for our uplift, but we want to make sure those are weathered in. So we're going to run a strip of ice and water shield up and over all of this before that panel gets covered and cleated in.
At the same time perimeter flashing goes on, Matt installs the valley metal so the roof is ready to start accepting panels.
So before we started this valley, we ran a chalk line up the middle to make sure everything's running straight. You know, as we run up to the peak, we ran one up the other valley. We also coordinated that with our ridge to make sure everything's tied in clean at the top. we put the ice and water shield down, we do a really good job to sweep the roof off to clean things up. And every now and then you miss something here. I don't know if it's a staple or what it is, but we want to make sure we get this out from underneath here. Because if we put this down and then you put any weight on the panel near it, that'll put a dent in the panel. And you'll see that walking in the house every single day for the next 30, 40 years, however this roof is on here. So we want to make sure we take care of anything we find as we're working around. That way the roof can look as good as it is, you know, meant to look when we're all finished.
Once the perimeter trim and valleys are in place, it's time to install our first panel. Panel layout is a huge part of the process, and there's a few different ways you could do it. In this case, the pipe penetration on the front of the house was the driving factor of layout, so Matt measured over to calculate the size of the first panel.
On Adam's roof, we got a couple factors here. We've got a soil stack in the front here. We've got a vent stack right there for, I believe it's his air conditioning unit. And then we've got these sheets coming across on the top. We want to try to tie it all together, but sometimes you have to make choices. So we're measuring from the end of the building, figuring out where the edge of our sheet is. We've measured the width of our sheet. We figured out how wide that is and how many sheets are going to fit in here. We want to land this soil stack here in the middle of the panel. So the only thing we have is a boot detail on the front of the house. On the back, we're going to have to do a little more complicated of a detail, which Adam wanted to put on the back, because there's just more going on and he didn't want to see it from the house. So we laid the sheets out, so we land on this pipe, and then when we do the pipe in the back, we'll have to do the other detail, and also so that when we come across the ridge, the sheets are lined up so everything just looks clean and neat.
We started installing on the back side of the house first, but because we wanted the panel ribs of the front and back roof planes to line up at the ridge, we cut our first panel on the back to be the same size as the first panel on the front. Matt marked the panel and cut it lengthwise, adding 1 inch to the width to account for the hem.
We're going to have a 1-inch hook at the bottom and have a 1-inch hook on the gable end. We'll fold it over, we can hook our panel. Half the time, the largest part of the job is just getting the first panel on. So once we get the first panel on and we get sheets rolling, we'll be able to move right along.
When it comes time to install the clips on your standing seam panel, check with your manufacturer to get their required clip spacing. Our manufacturer's technical director happened to be on the job site shooting videos, so we could just ask him. The clips are going down every 16 inches on center for this project, so the crew marks each clip location and snaps a chalk line across the roof for future reference. The panels are fabricated with a standard 1-inch hem at the eave and a 1-inch bend at the top. We kept sheeting across the back plane of the roof. Matt cut a penetration for the pipe when we came to it, and we'll finish that flashing later down the line. So as you're paneling, the Z closure goes here at the top where you snap your ridge detail on. You're gonna want that as even and as straight as possible coming across the roof. So one tip in order to be able to do that, here we have chalk lines spaced evenly between the ridge here on both sides across the entire length of the roof. And then over here where the panels are going down, as each panel goes down, it gets marked right here so that we know where that chalk line falls. And that way, these Z closures will go down nice and even and straight across the entire length of the panel run. So for Adam's house here, once all of these panels go down, the Z closures will go down on this entire side. But when we move over to this side of the roof and start paneling down here, we're gonna go one Z closure at a time per panel as we come across. That way it's gonna minimize foot traffic across the panels, and we won't have the potential for additional damage, people walking on the panels here.
Okay, so what we're doing here is we measured the end of the roof to the bottom of the panel. Now we've taken a number, top of the roof to the end of the panel. Not all buildings are square. As you're sheeting your sheets, you try to keep everything square too. But what we have at the bottom of the panel is 271 3/8. The top of the panel is 270 3/4. So the top of the panel is, well, in this case, it's not bad. It's about 5/8 closer. So we're gonna fan these panels just a little bit on the bottom over about 15 sheets. So when we get to the end of the building, everything lines up nice and square. You don't want to get to the end of the building, have 2 or 3 panels left, and all of a sudden find out you're 1.5 inches, 2 inches out of square. That'll really show up in the finished product. So we want to take the time ahead to make sure, and if it's a bigger, longer roof, sometimes you take 2 or 3 points and measure it, but make sure that as we get to the end of this building, we're going to come into it nice and square and have a clean panel at the end. So we're putting our Z closures in. We already snapped our lines earlier and we marked our panels so we know where to put them. This is just a cap to seal off the top of the panel, and then it gives something for our ridge cap to cleat onto. Later on we'll hook the ridge cap on these and we'll fasten this off so that way it's got a consistent hook all the way down. It makes for a really strong ridge. These closures we made in the shop earlier, we already measured the panel, we cut them to length to fit inside. We went ahead and actually pre-drilled them all. It just makes it easier to put the screws in. Holes are already marked. You can see down in here, these are put in. Rolled a strip of butyl tape on here. It's a non-curing tape sealant. It works great for this application. So we're just going to line it up with our marks from our chalk line. Set it in, trying not to scratch the panel, anything. And anytime we cannot nick the panel, obviously we're just going to end up with a better quality product in the end. We fabricated these Z's to the height of the sheet. By the time we add the thickness of our butyl and everything, we end up just above the high, just enough room for our clips. We're gonna caulk these highs in to keep the water out going up the sides and in the back here on the 4 corners. And that is it for that sheet.
Now we can move to the front side. The first panel on the front uses the same measurements as the first panel on the back, so Matt cut it down to size and started bending over the gable hem with his Wuko bender.
Pretty straightforward, but with a tool like this that rides the edge, the cleaner and the straighter your cut, the easier it's going to be to form and the better your rake is going to look when you're done. For this sheet, I want to grip that bottom clip so as we run clips up the rest of the way, we're not pushing the sheet out. That way they're all forced to be held in a straight line, consistent with the panel.
We panel across the front of the house, adding our Z closures as we go and cutting a hole for the pipe penetration. On Adam's house, 2 valleys meet at the top of the ridge, so Matt joins these areas before we catch up to the valley.
We've fit our valley, we've cut it back in. We actually have this tabbed underneath, and then we have it tabbed over for watershed. Same thing here. This is tabbed underneath. We'll caulk in here, fill that in behind, set it back in, seal in here, and set this back over. And that would be your complete top to your valley. We'll run our sheets up tie them in with our cleats, run our sheets in here, and then we'll carry our ridge cap across this underneath the sheets just to protect this point, because this is one of your riskier points on your roof and you really want to protect it. Just doing some maintenance on the valley, keep it clean, don't step in it, don't sweep metal shavings down it.
Now that we've reached the valley with the panels on the front, it's time to start using some basic geometry to make cuts and hems. Real quick, I want to give a big shout out to Matt Lane and his crew from Metal Construction Solutions and Installations. They are true craftsmen who know what they're doing. They do big commercial jobs, including weather-tight warranties, so we knew they'd be perfect to show the installation process for a standing seam metal roof. If you're in Ohio and need a commercial crew, need a commercial standing seam metal roof installer, true craftsman, Metal Construction Solutions and Installations. Link is in the description down below. All right, let's go check out that valley.
So we've sheeted our roof up to our valley. It's real important when we come into our valley that we protect it. So we've actually just cut a piece of ice and water shield with the backing still on it. Brought it up under our cleat. So when we hook our panel, slide it up in, we're not scratching our valley. On this particular panel, we only have about 1.5 inches that rides up into the valley, and then the next panel will be full. So we did the bottom of the sheet the same way, other than we got the angle on our valley and we folded that up under a little bit tighter because this cleat is on top of the valley, so we've actually got to go around the bottom of the sheet and we've got to go around the cleat so it's a little tighter, and let's see if it fits. So we want to, okay, come on up. Okay, well, we're starting to get clips on the sheet. We're going to measure over. These panels are running approximately 15 3/4. So we'll butt the panel. 15 3/4 ties into our cleat right here. Just a moment ago we took a square, we ran it out, came up with our mark. This panel, over the span of the panel, is going to change 16 5/8. So we're going to go over, prep our panel. We're going to have an angle that takes us 16 5/8 up across the width of the panel. Well, now that we've got this sheet in here, Tyler's getting the clips in, the top's locked down so it can't move. We can pull our protection out, we'll get the clips in, and we'll just do the same thing, taking our measurements right up the valley.
Well, we finished the back side of the roof with panels, but as you can see today, the weather did not cooperate. Huge storm rolled through Cleveland. So instead, we are in the fab shop and we're gonna be breaking some ridge and Z-bar closures to finish up the trim package. It's a new day on the job site. The rain moved on and we can continue on to the chimney flashing.
For Sheffield Metals weather-tight warranty for curbs, chimneys, they require a pre-manufactured welded curb base to be installed. We've set the base in place. We've got it sitting around this chimney. We've got our lines marked to cut a notch in called our reglet. So we're going to cut this notch in here to install our flashing into. They've got a video on it, so if you want more information on that, click up here or in the description. Let's get at it. We got all our panels on beneath our chimney. We're marking out for our highs, and we're going to go lay out our curb. All right, so we've got our panel for the left side of our chimney complete. We've completed the bottom, completed the side up here and this little leg here, and now we're ready to go install. So what we have here is our regular piece that's going to go into our chimney. We've got our slot cut. This we can slide into there. When it comes done, we'll open this up a little bit, and that way when we drive that in there, it actually locks itself in. Then this will get a caulk bead along it to seal the top of that chimney off above the flashing. Something to note when caulking, you want to make sure your edges are all tight. Things are filled in. You don't want to have gaps in here, nice clean surfaces. You want that edge to have a tooled in finish and not be lifted. Right here, being at the top of this valley, is an ideal place to check our gable end to make sure we're coming in square. This panel's short. We can get a lot out of it real easy. If we wait till we're 2 or 3 panels ahead, since we've come all the way across this roof, we're really not sure how we're going to line up with this gable. So we can make our best adjustment in these next couple panels before they get longer. So we're going to have to bring this bottom ahead just about an 1/8 inch, 1/4 inch, make us line up over at the other end.
As we squared off and installed the last few sheets on the front side of the house, we also installed the panels on the back side of the garage. That leads us to the final roof plane, the front side of the garage.
On this last valley, we're starting up at the peak of the valley and we're working our way to the gable end. It's going to be real important how we start these sheets off. We don't want to be a 1/4 inch off, 1/8 inch off up here, because when we get down to this point, it'll be 1/2 inch off, and by the time we get down to the end of the roof, we're going to have a real hard time. So we ran a square line at the end of the building, we've taped across, and now we're just setting our first 4 or 5 sheets to make sure that as we start down our path here to the end of the building, we're going to come in clear, clean, and straight.
Once the first few sheets are squared off, we'll continue installing panels as normal, but let's go check out the pipe penetrations and then we'll come back and finish this roof plane.
So we're starting to do our soil stacks on this roof. There's 2 soil stacks here. We've got one just over the back of the ridge. We're real close to the ridge. So we're just gonna Z-trap this in and go up under our flashing. Our other soil stack right over here is in the center of the panel, so we'll be able to drop that roof boot right on the roof, and we'll show you that in a little bit. Yeah, here we're gonna closure this in. We're caulk taped underneath here, just like we're doing with our top closures. We're tabbed. We'll finish pinning this in. We're gonna caulk this in. Then we'll set a plate over here and we'll be able to put our boot on top of here. Like I said, we've got a different detail here. The only reason we can do this like this is because we are so close to the ridge. We can duck under it. Once we get, 20 feet down the roof, expansion begins to play a role. So a detail like we have over here with that boot, our roof deck's gonna have to be cut out a little wider. That way when we screw through our panel, that panel still has the ability to move and we're not trapping that expansion into the roof deck right there. We've also got another detail that you can refer to Sheffield Metals, warranty pages on, where we trap the high that is actually more like doing a curb that has panels coming into the top and separate panels leaving the bottom, so that this can get pinned solid here and the panels up above, when they get longer, have the ability to expand and contract.
With the pipe boot details taken care of, we can go back to the front side of the garage, finish up those panels, and install the closures.
Just a quick note, this fastening is what your panel hangs on. So you're going to want to make sure that these screws are good and secure, that you're following the suggested screw pattern, because the panel expands and contracts and is pinned off at this point here. So make sure that this is done well. Obviously, as you start getting toward the end of the building, space becomes a real commodity. So you really want to be careful. You start getting down to 2 or 3 panels. You know, be aware of your edge, be aware of your surroundings. Watch how you're walking on your panels, because you're going to have to at some point start moving more on your panels. So at this point, it's be careful. Make sure you're tied off properly. Make sure you can't swing off the end and hit the ground. Fabbing our last sheet of the job. I guess it's the one we've been looking for the whole time. Should have started with this one first. Like we mentioned earlier, just want to be real gentle with your hammer, rubber mallet, so we don't damage the sheet. Too big of a hit, too much of a bend, you won't be able to get rid of it when you go to crimp it over. And once we get this sheet on, probably wrapping it up for the day, but we'll come back next week and start working on our ridges and our finished details.
We finished sheeting and we finished all the details except for the ridge. So the vented ridge is the next and last thing on our list. At each gable and at the top of the valley, there's a short piece of regular ridge cap that goes on, and then the vented ridge is set in place from there.
Just want to take a second here. We've put together a mock-up here on how we're going to install this for you. We've got our closures in the tops of our sheets. Our closures have been sealed off. We still need to do this. We've got our drip stop on, and this is our vented core vent system. This allows air to travel up through and around. This is a drip stop. That way, just in case any water blows up, we've got a small second line of defense, a little angle up to keep it from blowing up into your ridge assembly. put this together, this will end up here with a screw that runs down through the cap, through the core vent, and down through the Z, once again going to the outside of the envelope of the roof, so we don't have any fasteners running through the system and into the building. But this is kind of how we're going to go. We'll run our laps, we'll seal and caulk everything, we'll set these and seal it, you know, hold them down, but once we're pulled in together and tight, you know, this will be your only access for air to enter and leave. This particular core vent has a fiber made on the end, mainly, you know, for real small bugs, but mainly for blowing snow and stuff. That way, you know, it just kind of stops snowflakes and stuff from blowing up into the ridge cap assembly. As we get down to the last couple screws here on Adam's roof, I want to thank everybody at the Metal Roofing channel, including Adam and Thad and all the other people involved, for the opportunity to work with them on this project. Thank my guys who were willing to do this with me. As with any construction project, there's two key parts to it. You've got the materials you use and you've got your installation. Quick note, just working with the guys over at Sheffield Metals for several years now, I don't know too many other people who care about their product, care about their warranties, and care about your roof any more than these fellas do. So if you line yourself up with a good installer and you're using the right products, you know, you shouldn't have anything to worry about. Just have a roof that you can enjoy for years to come without a worry.
And that brings us to the finished product. Adam's project went from an aging shingle roof to a beautiful, new, long-lasting standing seam metal roof. Thank you to Matt Lane and his crew for metal construction solutions and installations. A link to his website is in the description, as well as links to a host of other videos that dive even further into each topic we demonstrated here. Make sure you subscribe to the Metal Roofing channel for more content, comment down below with any questions, and as always, I'm Thad Barnett, and I'll catch you next time.